Hey, I'm Ariel.
I'm Simone.
Welcome back to Offworld, the show where we geek out about all things space exploration and pop culture. Today we are talking about Space Camp.
So both the movie and the actual Space Camp.
We are joined with Trace Dominguez, the producer of Seeker, who has actually been to Space Camp.
I bought this shirt specifically because of that.
Oh, really? They didn't give it to you?
No.
They should have given it to you at an adult size when you were a kid, so they'd be like, he would grown into it.
They would have looked, that would have been so great for them. But I don't think they were that prepared.
So the very first question, obviously, is, so we all watched Space Camp. I had never seen this film before. I hadn't even heard of it. I guess it sort of just went by me. But you've actually been to Space Camp, so what was that like, and how does it hold up to the film?
I brought with me my actual Space Camp manual that they gave me when I was there in 1990.
Oh my God.
This is what Space Camp really is. It's just filling out paperwork. There I am, Trace Dominguez, Venus team. Karen was our guide. I don't know what they called him. Space Camp counselor.
What was the name of the guide in the movie?
Oh, Andy, the would-be astronaut.
So Karen was your Andy.
Yeah.
So in the film, Andy is a woman who has trained to be an astronaut, has not been selected to fly yet. Her husband has been selected and went to the moon.
That's right.
And so she has a lot of frustration around the fact that she's a pilot and hasn't actually been sent to space, and people are sort of wondering why she's there. So you actually had that experience where you get assigned someone who's experienced in the space industry?
So in real Space Camp, it's a lot more like summer camp. You're there for a week, 5 days. While I was there, my parents I went to the Titusville, Florida Space Camp, so they went to the beach while I was at Space Camp for a week with my cousins. And I said 1990, but I think it was 93. And
wow, you're editing your age as we go.
I am. So Karen was a camp counselor. She was just a local Florida person, potentially. I don't remember a lot about her. But she wasn't a NASA trained scientist or anything like that. And they had a lot of the stuff that you see in Space Camp, like the multi-axis simulator. They had that there, and we got to ride in it. But there wasn't a lot of controlling it. It was just riding in it. And then line stood out to me very early on, which we were talking about before we started filming, that NASA sort of you could see their tentacles, I think you said, kind of
in the movie. How they
I was talking about how, so this is a film, it obviously documents NASA a lot and Space Camp a lot, and in the movie you can really see NASA's tentacles sort of getting into the movie by, they have some educational moments where they're like, oh, what is a launch window, and what's the, so they explain a lot of things, and you can really tell that it's a little bit off from the rest of this movie.
It's pushed in afterwards.
For sure. That was the montage at the beginning where they're going through and showing shots of Space Camp, and Andy is talking over it, and she's like, Space Camp is a way to get kids familiar with space hardware. And I was like, wow, that is actually what it was. They had a 6-axis simulator that we got to use, and they push you and you just float across this big warehouse area. But they also had the moon chair, which was a garage spring attached to the ceiling, and it was supposed to simulate the moon gravity at 1/6 gravity. So you just get buckled into a chair like a carnival ride, and you just jump up and down.
It was like one of those bouncy chairs that toddlers have.
Yeah, kind of. But for a 12-year-old.
Well, let's see if you guys can pass this test. Question 9. Blank is a machine that performs various complex tasks similar to those of human beings.
A robot?
A robot. 1 point to Ariel. Oh my God. This is the kind of stuff that you got it right. You got it right. A robot with
right.
A robot with capital R.
So wait, let's talk about the robot. So this film has Jinx, the robot, which is, okay, I have to say my first impressions. It's a fat little sphere of a robot. It's adorable, but it's on 3 little janky
very
wheels.
spindly.
And it's supposed to be a robot that was supposed to be in space, but it's on 3 wheels. And so
weird.
Simone, what did you think of the robot?
I thought the robot, it's if there's so many movies that have a robot sidekick, I feel like it was cute, but it's also they're it's broken. And how much was it? It was $70 million.
Yeah.
And then the kid just has it.
He hacks hacks it
Nobody,
together.
Yeah, but they just
nobody's
let it-
keeping track of the robot.
Yeah,
no
the
one
kid
cares.
just
Like, robot,
puts it in
whatever.
his closet and is like, oh, this is my new friend. And nobody is like, don't touch the $70 million robot.
Tiny Joaquin Phoenix just
Yes,
doing whatever
oh my
he
God.
wants.
But it was very, I mean, it was cute and very smart for being said as being stupid. In the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely, it struck me as like, I was watching it and it was like lighting up and doing all, and I was like, what are those lights actually for? I'm pretty sure NASA wouldn't just put lights on a robot for fun. You know? Like they would have a purpose of some kind.
I don't.
To look cool.
I mean,
Right.
That's the purpose. To look cool.
yeah, a lot of the lights seem to be signaling like when it's hacking NASA and saying like, I've got to get these kids into space. Like,
Yeah.
spoiler, the
Put a little
robot
disc.
tries to get the kids into space
Yeah.
by hacking NASA's mainframe and saying, please send these kids to space. And NASA's like responding over, the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't go to space.
Yeah, so what about you? I mean, definitely all the computering and the robot being autonomous enough to make that decision and actually be able to override all of the systems. What are some of the other things that bothered you about it? Inaccuracies, blinking lights that have no purpose. They just drain the battery.
Yeah, lights with no purpose really bothered me. It really did.
I think my main thing that bothered me, and that would probably bother me even if I hadn't been on a zero-G flight, but I went on these flights or airplanes that does parabola, so you get to experience what it's like to be weightless.
So cool.
That when they're simulating them being weightless, when they're in space, the hair is still really flat.
So wrong.
They're still
It was so
floating around, kind of like the body movements looks kind of nice, but the hairs are just like obeying gravity.
The thing that I think is funny about the hair, because in so many movies, especially from this time period of the 80s, you really don't get a lot of hair floating in special effects. But, you could see that they tried so hard because they have her earrings, Tish's earrings,
they,
sort of float
at
out.
one point,
And
yeah.
so they've got everything on these little wires. They're trying so hard.
Yeah.
And then they don't care about the hair.
Because
Yeah.
I'm like, you could just have put the hair in a ponytail. Or, because it's especially
And
the
then-
longer hair and something and done something with
Yeah.
that. But they
Yeah,
decided
yeah.
everybody had to have their hair out and it was going to be flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the cringe-worthy thing about the movie that I couldn't get over is there's just a lot of sexism in it.
There's
just a
so
lot, and a lot of
much.
internalized sexism. So Andy, the woman who she's been through a lot. She's a pilot. She hasn't gotten selected to fly, and so she's been through some stuff. But she projects that onto the other women and treats the other women so harshly, or I guess they're teenage girls so harshly. For instance, Tish is she's dressed like a 80s Valley girl, but she studies astronomy and she worked at JPL.
Apparently
and
has an
everyone acts
eidetic memory.
yeah, and everyone acts like she's an idiot the
'Cause she
entire
chews
time.
gum.
Yeah,
Because she chews gum. That's why.
and also the character Catherine, she wants to be the first female shuttle commander ever, and they kind of are like, oh, you can't be that, and
Yeah.
you've got to be a pilot, and
Yeah.
they project all this stuff, and they just let it lie. It doesn't ever resolve. That killed me because I looked up, so when is the very first female shuttle commander? So this film was made in 1986. The very first female shuttle commander wasn't until 1999.
Oh,
So it's you see,
Oh,
in the
man.
film, this girl's dreams getting crushed, and it played out in reality too.
But also, it's not only
That's
that
so
they get
sad.
crushed, but she also, in the end, she realized that she would be a much better pilot than commander.
shuttle commander.
Yeah, so she kind of embraces the place she got put into, and
Yeah.
is like, oh, but this is the correct role.
I
so
also
sad.
was watching it and thought, why is Andy telling the person who really wants to be shuttle commander that she can't be it, and instead giving it to the white guy who doesn't give a crap?
Yeah.
Who's just like, I'm
just
just here
wants
for the
his lead.
chicks, man. Oh, cool. You should be the leader.
Yeah.
Like, what the?
my
that was
God.
so dumb.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that just didn't make a lot of sense. But let's talk about things that we loved. What was your favorite thing of the film?
I was jealous that they got to go in the shuttle, because that's sort of a thing that was a borderline thing I loved and hated, because I've been to a couple of launches. They don't let you anywhere near the shuttle while it's there. And the fact that they got to go in a shuttle during an engine test, I was like, who's the insurance for NASA in 1986 that's letting a bunch of kids inside of a shuttle during a launch, during a hot like engine tests. Anyway, I was jealous of that. I really wanted to be in the
I
show.
feel like one of the like big learnings from the movie is like the kids learning about sticking to their roles and supporting, because one of the mistakes one of the kids makes is that she's always trying to like take over the role of the other people because she thinks she can do it better, and she's the one who wants to be the space or commander, and just like that's like the learning that like let people do the job that they're good at. And this is a very dull story. I'm selling it. But I was speaking at a conference with Chris Hadfield, and we were hanging out, and then we did like a press run, and they just like have a bunch of journalists come and interview you, and there's somebody who runs it, and they kind of feed you journalists, and you sit down and you answer questions. And there was this one journalist who's like not sticking to protocol and kind of trying to sneak in and like get a slot. And I gave him an interview because I was like, oh, there's somebody who's like asking me questions and putting a camera in my face. But Chris Hadfield was like, when the guy tried to get an interview from him, he's like, oh, I'm gonna let the woman who's in charge decide that. And I was like, that's such an astronaut thing to do. That is like the correct thing to do. And I really saw that in the movie. And I was like, what would Chris Hadfield do?
Well, what did you think about, so you've done your DIY astronaut training, like when you were watching the movie, were you like, oh, I haven't even begun to scratch the surface, or were you like, oh, I've done all those things, like I pretty much need like an honorary certificate from space camp now?
I mean, I think they could definitely at least give me an adult-sized celebrity shirt.
That's a pretty badass shirt.
I think one of the things, because I went in the like an Orbitron, and they had a similar thing where it's just like this weird gyroscope and you can spin in all different directions. And she was like in it and handling it, and I'm like, I felt like I was gonna throw up throughout. I mean, maybe if I would have been younger doing it, it would have been better.
When they put me in that thing.
Yeah, did you like it?
I don't think I did.
I did not want to do it, and they're like, you have to. You came to space camp. And I was like, okay.
Your parents paid a lot of money for you to be able to do this.
Yeah, I actually have so they give you a VHS tape when you leave space camp of like you at space camp and the rest of your team. I was, like I said, on the Venus team with my cousins.
You have this?
So I have a video of it.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna see if my dad can find it in his archive.
Do you remember anything that's on it? Or
I remember that the kids were telling me that it's not scary, and that came through on the camera, and I'm like, great, of all the things, of my space camp memories, I'm just like and some kid yells off camera, Trace, it's not scary! And I was like, so I wrote it, but
that's a feat of bravery.
They did say that you can't throw up in it, because
as if that would be a choice,
because your stomach is in the center and you're spinning all around it. And I was like, I don't know if that's how gravity, how the forces work. But you know what? Cool. I think they were just trying to tell me that to make me ride it.
Yeah. So you didn't throw. Wait. So you actually went in a 0G flight. Though.
Yeah.
Did you throw up?
No, I felt great. The thing is, like, if you start throwing up, they assign you back to your seat, and you're not allowed to. So then you basically just paid a lot of money to feel terrible. But I felt perfect. I was so nervous about getting sick because it would just suck. But when we were up there, I felt perfect throughout the like 1.5 or 2 hours that we were there. But as soon as we landed and we're down on the ground, I was like, but I think it was just my body rejecting gravity. It was like, no,
I prefer to fly,
like weightless. Yeah. And we're back to this again. No, I'm gonna protest. But I felt good when I did it.
Did you eat before?
I did eat before. Yeah.
Okay.
You're supposed to eat before.
I flew in an F-18 and I threw up everywhere, and we didn't even go.
Were they like, oh gosh?
Well, I threw up in a bag,
guy?
and then I put the bag in my flight suit.
Oh my God. Oh, gross.
In your flight suit?
My God.
Well, it was a plastic bag. Yeah.
I mean, my policy has been like, so I haven't taken a 0G, parabola flight to feel weightlessness, and like, I don't know what I would do if it was offered to me, but so much of like my policy has been, well, if I'm going to throw up, I better be freaking going to space. Like I'm going to throw up. Like, I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, I was just like in an airplane. Like I want to be like, yeah, I threw up, but I went to space. Like, I don't know.
Throwing up in a spacesuit is so much better.
Well, I wouldn't be in an EVA, spacesuit.
Let's hope not. Wow, that would be a mess.
So another question that I have is, Space Camp today. So we saw in the movie Space Camp from 1986. It had been around, I think, only like 4 years or something. So Space Camp still exists today.
Yeah.
And what's sort of the current state of it? Do you know?
So I happened to be in Titusville for a SpaceX launch recently, and that's where I went to Space Camp. That Space Camp sadly went out of business in 2011. That one is right at Kennedy Space Center. That's the one that I went to. They relaunched it as something called Camp KSC, which is now run by a different company. But it's still there. It's still in the same place. They actually let me go in and like look at it, and it looks the same, which is really cool from the early 90s. That was a cool personal thing. But they still have the space camp in Alabama, which is in Huntsville, and I watched the credits of the film, and that's where they filmed the movie Space Camp was at the Alabama one, which is a little bit of an inconsistency because there's no launch pad at the Alabama one.
Yeah, they conflate Florida and Alabama.
That was interesting. But that one is still there, and I believe, if I'm correct, it's expanded. So they're still very popular. When I was there, they really only had like teams that were named after planets and maybe a moon or two. I'm not really sure. I was pretty young, but now they have like way more people that want to go every week. So they've expanded it into all sorts of different things.
And it's a thing that both kids and adults can go to.
I think you can go as an adult. I mean, I think I should look into this.
We should
like go twice. That'd be fun.
Yeah, go twice. We should just all go. Team Space Geeks.
We should, yeah. We should
I will
go
make
again.
a video about it to justify it.
Yeah, there you go.
But would you recommend it?
I would, yeah. I think the thing I remember most about Space Camp was the camp part, funnily enough. Like, I was there, again, as I mentioned, with my cousins. One was a year older and one was a year younger. So the three of us were kind of a little rat pack at Space Camp, and we were on the same team, which was nice. You are staying in bunk beds like in the film. You have a cafeteria, which has unlimited space ice cream, which is cool, but also other space, like freeze-dried food, space ice cream.
Big quotes, yeah.
Very big. But the strawberries, I remember, the freeze-dried strawberries being really gross. But the food was fine. Titusville kind of smelled funny, I thought, as a kid. Like that, I don't know. Like the memories that I have are really funny. But a lot of the stuff that you do at Space Camp is really great. Like you learn a lot about NASA. You learn a lot about the importance of space travel and exploration, and you get really excited about it. You get to build rockets and design like a space station of your own like team's design. We chose a space hotel, which was really cool. Shout out to like the people doing that now in Bigelow and stuff. Yeah. And this was 20 years ago, so it's like these ideas were out there, and being exposed to kind of that environment and the excitement of NASA. I mean, it's a government agency, but it's more than that, right? Because of how people sort of feel about it. And the Endeavour was on the launch pad while I was there, so I got to like see that off in the distance.
You don't feel the same about the DMV as you feel about NASA?
No, not as much. Department of the Interior, maybe?
The DMV camp?
That would be good.
Would not send my kids there.
Oh my God.
You get like all the rubber stamp training and like looking at people like this.
Did you bring the right form?
How many forms of ID did you bring? We learned all the acronyms too, which was funny. In the movie, they kept using acronyms.
So my final question, so we watched Space Camp. You both have done astronaut training in a way. So if you got the opportunity to go to space, how long would you like to go for, ideally, and what would you like to do? Trace, do you want to start?
I'm just thinking, I think, yes, I would go to space. Absolutely. I don't think I would want to be there that long, but I haven't experienced the weightlessness that you have, so I think I'd be more nervous about it. But I don't think I'd want to be there that long, only because you're in such a small space. There's not a lot of like room to move around. Even the ISS is only a 5-bedroom house. So maybe like a day on the ISS would be cool.
Really?
Yeah, maybe a couple of days.
What about you?
I feel I would go for 10 days, but that's probably just because that's like the length of if you buy a ticket to
like
go
to
to
on
space.
A vacation.
Yeah, that's like you go there for 10 days, so that's like what I've been programmed. I'm just trying to see my chances, like are my chances greater of actually becoming an astronaut and getting accepted into an astronaut program, or becoming like a billionaire? Yeah, so you have to decide between those two and see what basket you put your space eggs in.
So, your space chances?
So I have actually interviewed an astronaut who told me that he said, if you ever go to space, make sure you go for longer than 4 days. And he said, because the first 4 days you are miserable because the blood is re-equalizing throughout your body. So you get a puffy face, which they call moon face, and you just feel sick and gross. And he said, after about 4 days, your body figures out how to manage it and you feel much better and you're able to really properly enjoy.
Answer.
That's days, so you get one good day. So that's what I've heard. But anyway, thanks so much for joining Simone and I today, Trace. This was great.
Yeah. I'll send you some pictures of my time at Space Camp.
Definitely.
They send you a group photo at the end, and I'm just like a smiling idiot.
But I want to see that. It's not scary, Trace.
Yeah, I've got it. I'll send it to you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we talked with Trace, and that was just amazing. Really hearing about his experience at Space Camp and getting a bit into your DIY astronaut training. I mean, what did you think?
I really thought it was interesting to hear about how you could kind of see NASA's hand and like the little educational moments. Like you can see the type of language they're like trying to jam into a kind of free-flowing film. And I think overall, this movie must have been funded by Space Camp. Like it was a way for them to market.
I didn't look up the funding structure, but I know certainly, NASA usually authorizes things. And so, yeah, you could see the things like them talking about launch windows and thermal curtain failures and all these little details and some things were inconsistent, but you could definitely see where they really tried hard to make it accurate.
But they are, because like they must have such a split relationship to pop culture or NASA and pop culture, because a part of it, it's like marketing. It's great marketing for them, but they must also really try and fight inconsistencies and inaccuracies.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think the robot sort of helped be sort of the comical, side of the movie where they got away with a lot of inaccuracies, like hacking NASA and stuff. But yeah, it was definitely, I don't know, it was great. And one thing I really wish that we had asked Trace more about was just, how much he felt prepared then to become a NASA astronaut, or, did it affect his career or not? But yeah. So anyway, thanks so much for watching with us today. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and also leave a comment with all of the different movies or space-related pop culture things that you'd like us to talk about.